So in the last session, we just had a recap, detailed recap on the simple linear regression, multiple linear regression. Also, we discussed about what is slope, what is intercept, and how to interpret them from the business point of view, and also how to interpret the slope and intercept, and even that one from the statistical point of view, right? For example, if you find f statistics in the report, so what does it says? And also we discussed about adjusted R squared, right? Adjusted R squared is the metric using which we will decide how well the model performs. But adjusted R squared is not the only metric we use to determine whether the fitted model is so good enough to deploy it in the production. In addition to that, we use a metric like a mean absolute error or sum of squared error, or importantly the root mean squared error will be using it. So let's say the RMSE, the better the model. So for that I told you, right, how to use the RMSE, right? Just by looking at the RMSE value alone you cannot decide, right? So how less is less the error, how large is the large. Supposing your RMSE value is 22.3, that doesn't mean it is too big or too less. So fit another model, compare that RMSE of that. See, probably what's the best thing is we baseline the model. Once you baseline the model with the RMSE value, or with the baseline model's RMSE value, you can compare with other models RMSE, and you decide which model's RMSE is less. That is the one we'll be using it most of the time in the case of real-time scenario. Okay, we'll be using RMSE to evaluate the model accuracy in addition to adjusted R squared. In the case of simple linear regression, we rely only on the R squared. We don't have to look at the adjusted R squared. So in the case of multiple linear regression, why we are supposed to use adjusted R squared? Why do we have to use adjusted R squared? Because in your model, if you keep on include more number of predictor variables, independent variables, the R squared value will blindly spike up. Whether the features that you include in your model really has any influence on your target variable or not, the R squared will the value for the R squared will spike up. But adjusted R squared, it is a very unbiased, it is an unbiased one, right? R squared is a biased one, whereas adjusted R squared is very unbiased one. Even though you include any number of features, it will take into account of which all features are statistically significant, which all features are not helpful or not explaining the target variable, right? By keeping this in mind, it will compute the adjusted R squared value. Fine. So you know what is RMSE? It's a very simple one when it comes to the formula, everything, right? It's very easy to understand. So you know what is error? Error is nothing but actual minus predicted value, right? That is what your error. So we square the error and then we take the square root of the error. That is what your root mean squared error. But what we do is we square the error for all the observations, and then we add all the squared error, and then we take the square root on this. That is what your RMSE. Okay, fine. So why RMSE? Why can't I use this one? Sum of squared error. See, or mean squared error. We take the the mean squared error, right? Instead of sum of squared error, we take the mean squared error, and then we square the mean squared error, right? So why RMSE? Why should I use RMSE? Why can't I use mean squared error itself? Right? Why RMSE is better than mean square? See, the mean squared error is, it's very biased for higher values, right? Especially if you have large error values, right? The RMS is the best metric to reflect the performance, especially dealing with large error values. Right? Fine. So that is the one thing. Apart from this, RMSE will give you the value in terms of your target variable unit of measure. So housing price, right? Error in terms of housing price. Root mean square error will give you the the error in terms of the price. Okay. It just give you give you that one. That is also the reason why we use RMSE. First of all, let's try to understand what exactly R squared is all about. In R Studio, I showed you, right? R Studio, even in Anaconda also, I showed you the R squared value, especially when we use the stats pack, stats models. Stats models package, we have something called OLS function. That OLS function, if you store the OLS function output in a variable, and if you use summary of that variable, like how we do it in R Studio, right? Or you get exhaustive information about your model, like what is the dependent variable you used it, and what is the adjusted R squared, and what is the residual, and then you will get the omnibus test value, all the things you will be getting. Why it takes longer time? Fine. So first of all, what is R squared? So 1 minus sum of squared error divided by actual minus the mean value of the actual value square, right? This is what your R squared value. Instead of the writing this way, the denominator, I call this as a total sum of squared error. Sum of squared error divided by total sum of 1 minus this one. So if you solve this, what will happen? Total sum of squared error minus total sum of squared minus sum of squared error divided by total sum of squares. So what does it say? Total sum of squared minus sum of squared error is nothing but sum of squared regression. Sum of squared regression. See, if you look at this visually here, you will get to know this one. This is my x-axis values. This is my x-axis value, size of the house. This is my housing price. And if you take the mean value of x, it will be there in the middle, right? If you take the mean value of this y value, your mean or the average y value will be there in the middle of this line. If you join both the x and y average values, right? If you join these two things, right, it will be like this. At the intersection of both the x and y mean values, this line emanates. This is nothing but your prediction line, regression line or prediction line. See, in the last session I discussed about ordinary least squares. What is ordinary least squares? Ordinary least squares is a method used in linear regression model to identify the best fit line. Right? So, if somebody is asking you, hey, why should I draw a line here? Why can't I draw a line here? Right? So the rationale is the rationale for this one is the OLS method estimates the beta coefficient value in such a way the line should cover as many data points as close to as possible. In other words, we can say this way also. The mean value of your x and the mean value of y, the regression line originates at the intersection of both the mean value of x and y. We can say this way also. This is very important. This best fit line crosses this or emanates via this intersection line. Where it intersects, right? This is where it emanates. Fine. This is fine. This is my regression line, or this is my best fit line, or prediction line, whatever you call it. Okay. So this is my mean value of y, and my predicted values are actual values here, right? This is my actual value, actual housing price, predicted housing price. Okay, because the line, right, which touches this line, right, that is where your predicted value will be there. Hence I mentioned y hat here. Y hat is nothing but predicted value. So the difference between actual and predicted housing price, actual housing price minus estimated housing price, that is what your error. Error is nothing but unexplained variation. Unexplained variation. See, the distance between the actual housing price and the mean value of the housing price, that is called your total sum of squared or total deviation. Total deviation. If you take the difference between these two, or these are called your error. But if you take the difference between these two, y hat minus y bar, y hat minus y bar is called sum of squared regression. This is my total sum of squares, right? If you subtract the sum of squared error, this is your sum of squared error, right? What we do is we take the square of this one, the sum of the square of the error, right? Sum of squared error minus the total sum of squared error is nothing but if you subtract this one from this one, right, this width or height, right, in this height, if you exclude this one alone, you will have the explained variation. That means with the given independent variable, what is the variation of my housing price explained by the given variable x, independent variable x, that is what r squared. That's what I mentioned it here. The proportion of the proportion of variance, the proportion of variation in y being explained by the variation in x. What is the proportion of variation in y that was explained by the variation in x, right? So that was what it says. This is my total deviation. So this is the unexplained variation. In simple time, explained variation plus the error, right, or the predicted value minus plus the error, right, that is what your total deviation. If you add these two things, you will get the actual value. We can say that way also. You just think this is predicted minus mean versus actual minus mean, right? Predicted minus mean versus actual minus mean. Predicted minus mean is for sum of squared error. Actual minus mean is nothing but your error, right? So r squared is equal to predicted minus mean whole square divided by the error squared, right? Predicted minus the mean is sum of squared, sum of SSR divided by SST. We can say this way also, SSR divided by SST. Instead of saying this way, because the explained variation divided by total sum of squares. Out of the total total squared error, what is the explained variation? What is the explained variation? That is what your r squared. In other words, we can say this way also, right? So 1 minus SSC. What is that? 1 minus SSC. Sum of squared error, right? Sum of squared error. This is my 1 total, right? 1 minus SSC is nothing but your SSR, right? SSR divided by SST. That's what I mentioned. We can see. That's why I put all these equations, because we don't know if you attend any online test with your prospective employer. Online test, they may give different the options in the multiple choice question. You should still be in a position to choose the correct answer. That is the reason why I explained this in detail. Okay, so this is what r squared is all about. Explained variation, unexplained variation. Explained variation plus unexplained variation. You remember the equation y is equal to beta naught plus beta 1. The beta naught plus beta 1 into x is your explained variation, plus the error is unexplained variation. We can say that way also, right? But this is how the r squared value is computed, SSR divided by SST or TSS. So the next one is adjusted r squared. This is what most of my students used to tell me. Satya, they asked me the equation for adjusted r squared. Even for a 12-year experienced guy, right? They asked him this question, the HCL guy. Okay, the idea behind adjusted r squared is to penalize the score as we add more features to our model. When you add a more number of features, when you keep on add more number of features, what adjusted r squared, it is going to penalize the score based on the predictive power of the features. Supposing you have, let's take our same example, size plus UDS plus the park plus MISC, right? So the park is not a significant variable, though you include that, because we can say significant variable, not a significant variable, or we call that as a predictive power, because park variable and MISC variable, these two variable are not having a predictive power. That is the reason why we did not see star along with those two variables in R. I showed you, right? I don't know why it still loads. Anyhow, fine. So what it does is, but R squared, what it does is, even though you include insignificant features, the R squared value increases like anything. It is biased one. You cannot rely on R squared in the case of multiple linear regression. Okay, this is the equation for adjusted R squared. 1 minus R squared into n minus 1. What is n? N is nothing but number of records in your data set divided by number of records minus number of parameters, number of features, nothing but number of columns, okay, minus 1. This is the one will give you the value for the adjusted R squared. You need to subtract this one from 1 in order to get the adjusted R squared value. Fine. So as P increases, adjusted R squared will tend to increase, reflecting the reduced power in the model. As P value increases, the adjusted R squared will tend to decrease. This is what we discussed along with each feature in the summary. When you do the summary of the machine learning model, right, the linear regression model, good. So we got this one. Where is that? I just execute the basic thing. It's being imported still. So now you understood how to create a training and test data set, and the set seed also you understood, right? That is to reproduce the same result for every run. The sample value should not get changed. So this is what my linear regression model. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use summary function. I was talking about this one, Java singlet fit not found. I was talking about this star here, these stars. That means these two features, both of these two features are highly statistically significant because we have 3 stars here. You remember in inferential statistics we discussed about the confidence level, right? So if you look here, the meaning for this one is, if you have triple zero star, that means okay, so 0.001, right? That means there is a 99% confident thus that this variable is highly statistically significant. The same way this one. Since these two variables do not have any value here, at least if we had 1 star here, that means 1 star is nothing but 0.05. 1 minus 0.05 is 0.95. 95% confident. This one is significant. Or at least 2 star. 2 star means so this is 95. This is how much? 1 minus 0.01, 99%, okay, and 1 minus 0.01, right, 0.0, that means 99.99%. So triple star is nothing but this one, right? So there is a 99.9% confident that these two variables are statistically significant. That is what this 3 star the double star and single star tells. But when it comes to Park and MISC, these two variables are not significant. Hence, these two features are not having the predictive power. But these two features are having higher predictive power. Though I included the all the features, which is nothing but the Park and MISC, my adjusted the R squared value went up 0.8981, which is more than this one, right? Blindly, whether you include a feature which is having a predictive power or not, R squared value will get increased blindly. Whereas this one is lesser than this one, 81, right? 33 here. So always adjusted R squared will be lesser than your R squared value most of the time. Okay. So in that case, why adjusted R square lesser than your R squared? Because though you include blindly any number of features, it penalizes the features that do not have predictive power. In this case, it doesn't have any predictive power at all. Hence, it is simply ignoring that. Okay, it is starting good. So 1 second, let me just. So now you understood what is R squared and what is adjusted R squared also. The same thing, I put it like this: SST equals SSR plus the total sum of squares measures the variation in the y values around their mean. Regression sum of squares, total sum measures the variation of the y values around their mean. Okay, and regression sum of square errors. And MAPE percentage. Some people, they use this metric MAPE. That means the actual minus predicted error divided by actual into 100. If you take the absolute value of this one, you will get MAPE percentage. Okay. What is the MAPE percentage? Okay. So mean absolute error, the formula, actual minus predicted. But since you are taking the mean, 1 divided by n. So actual minus predicted. For all the observations, the sum of actual minus predicted divided by the n. This is mean absolute error. Okay, because you are using this this line, right? Pipeline, 2 pipeline. That means it will, even though you get negatively, it will get converted as positively. You can use either mean absolute value, or you can use mean squared error, or you can use RMSE, root mean squared error. Fine. And linear regression, we discussed about what is linearity, right? There should be a correlation exists between the independent and dependent variable. In case of any feature that are not correlating with your target variable, that variable is not helpful in terms of predicting the target variable. And homoscedasticity, for each value of the predictors, the variance of the error term should be constant. As the predicted values and as the x value increases, the error should not go high. As the x value increases, the fitted values or the error should not, the result should not go high. Okay. And multi-collinears, right, this one, there should not be any correlation amongst the independent variable or between the independent variable. Independence of error for any pair of observations, the error term should be uncorrelated. The error value should not get correlated. So normality of error distribution. When you plot the error, it should be normally distributed. That's the reason why in R I showed you, we used QQ plot, right? So what is homoscedasticity? If the variance of the error term is constant, they are said to be homoscedasticity. If the error terms do not have constant weight, they are said to be heteroscedasticity. Look at this, there is some kind of funnel kind of shape here, right? So you will get confused with this. So you will get some kind of confusion. That's the reason why better you can see it is not exactly like this, but still you can make out by looking at this. In some cases, right, you will not be you will be inconclusive whether this pattern is homoscedasticity or not. How do I know that? So best thing, you can rely on the statistical test. Which statistical test you are supposed to use it? I discussed about Durbin-Watson test, and one more is Bruce-Pagan test. When will you use Bruce-Pagan test? When will you use? See, check for a Bruce-Pagan test is for homoscedasticity, right? A Durbin-Watson test is for independence of error, or autocorrelation. To check for the autocorrelation or independence of error, we use Durbin-Watson test. Statistical tests are more reliable. Sometimes the pattern may be confusing you. Okay, so but if you look at these kind of things, right, it is good. See, as the value of x increases, the predicted value also, or the error also, somewhat constant. Whether the actual value or whether the x value is small or bigger, right? So the error is somewhat constant. It is not going up something or going down. If the error terms do not have constant variance, they are said to be heteroscedastic. Here it is not constant, right? Suddenly it goes down, it goes high. It's not that good. How to detect heteroscedastic? Now the question is, the next one is, the next question is, fine, visually we can look at this, visual inspection, by performing the interview. They'll ask you, okay, so you are saying, you explained about the 5 linear regression assumption, fine. So how will you, supposing when I have heteroscedasticity in my model, how will I find out? By visually looking at the chart, or you can use Bruce-Pagan test, right? If the p-value is less than alpha, then you are going to reject the null hypothesis and you say heteroscedasticity is there. That is how you can detect it. How to address heteroscedasticity? You can log the variables. You can take the log of the independent variable. You can take the log of the independent variable, and then once you take the log of the independent variable, and then you check your adjusted R squared or MSE. If it is lesser, then you address the heteroscedasticity issue. This is one way of addressing the heteroscedasticity. Apart from that, we have something called Box-Cox transformation. That is not required now. When you take the Box-Cox transformation also, you can address this issue. Okay, which one? The heteroscedasticity. See, in our case it is good. We don't have heteroscedasticity, right? And it is homoscedasticity for the given data set. Fine. What if I have heteroscedasticity in my data set or in my model? How will I address that one? Do I have to address that one? Yes, you need to take the log of size plus UDA, log of UDA, something like that, and then you check it out. Okay. So supposing I have 100 variables, do I need to take all the 100 variables? It's kind of right. You start with taking the log on your dependent variable, and then you try it out, right? So most of the time it will settle down. Next one is multicollinearity. Whenever 2 or more of the predictors in a regression model are moderately or highly correlated, this is very important. Look here, there is a correlation between the independent variables, but it is the correlation very mild. There is a correlation, but it is very mild, then you can ignore it. If it is highly correlated, then it is the cause for the concern. You remember in the car plot I showed you, right? In the car plot I showed you the 2 variables were highly correlated. Which one? The Park and MIC were highly correlated. I'll just plot it once again. See, Park and MISC, left side, right? Park and MISC. Or you look at this way, Park and MISC. These two are highly correlated. Why? This is a dark blue. Dark blue is here, right? It is somewhat 0.95 or something like that. Highly correlated. So in that case, it is the cause for the the concern. If it is mildly correlated, something like 0.4 or something, you can ignore that. You can include in your model. If it is highly correlated, then you need to remove any one of the variables. Of the two, you need to remove any one of them, and you see which variable is highly correlated, right? Of the two variables, which variable is highly correlated with the target variable, that you need to check it out. See, there are two things you need to note down here. See, Park and MISC, these two independent variables are correlated. It is not supposed to get correlated as per the linear regression assumption. It is violating the linear regression assumption. Okay, I am going to remove Park. I am going to keep only MISC in addition to size plus UDS features. But can I keep MISC or Park? Now you need to check whether the Park variable is highly correlated to the price or MISC is highly correlated. MISC is highly correlated with the price, as well as MISC and the Park, both of them are highly correlated. In that case, you remove this one because Park is not highly correlated with this one, but or highly or moderately correlated with this one. But whereas this one is highly correlated with this one. See, most of the time, see, these two are the collinear variables are kind of redundant variable, right? Both of them will be correlated. See, in this case, these two variables are not correlated. Let us assume that these two variables also significant or having a predictive power, right? Of these two variables, which one should I keep, which one should I remove? Because these two are collinear variable. Now again you need to check whether this variable is correlated highly with this one, which one. There will be subtle difference between these two. So let's say this variable is slightly this variable is correlated slightly higher than this variable. Then what it is, you knock it off, you can keep this one, and then you can check. You can check your RMSE value. That is one way of addressing the multicollinearity. But if I have hundreds of features in my model, Karthik, as you said rightly, right? So what will you do it? You cannot blindly check, okay, Park is not correlated well compared to MISC, and I am going to remove. But again, I have remaining 50 variables are there. Remaining 50 variables are there, and I have 50 more variables are there. In that case, how will you address the multicollinearity, Karthik? Karthik, how will you address the multicollinearity? Karthik, kekda? Karthik, can you hear me?
Yes sir.
I was asking about this, and how will you address the multicollinearity problem?
Based upon the darkness of the circle.
No. Any other alternative is available. Supposing I have 50 features are there. Here we have only 2 features, Park and MISC. These two are correlated. If I have 50 more features are there, how will you address the multicollinearity? Not OR. Forget about OR Python. Which algorithm? I explained in the last session. All of you, please. We have something called ridge regression.
Ridge regression. Yes, sir.
Right? You can use ridge regression. This ridge regression algorithm, it addresses the correlation automatically. We don't have to worry which variable, which of these two collinear, which one should I include, which one manually. You don't have to do it. If you have 50 variables, of the 50 variables, 20, let's say at least 15 variables are collinear, then it's difficult, right? It's a time consuming. You leave it with ridge regression, he will take care. How he takes care? He assigns 0. He assigns 0 to the coefficient value of the specific or respective independent variable. Supposing of these two, right? This variable, of these two variable, if this model decides, okay, I will keep only MISC, then what he will do is he will assign the slope value for Park as 0. So slope into the Park, this one will become 0. This will not be taken into account. Smartly he does that. But one drawback with ridge regression is, though he addresses the collinearity, multicollinearity, the problem with ridge regression is he is including all the features that are not significant. He solves the problem partially. Supposing, let's say you have another 2 variables, those 2 variables also collinear. Okay, but those two variables are not statistically significant. But it will still include that in your model. But those two variables are, let's those two variables are not collinear here. We'll take the scenario. Let's say those two variables are not collinear, and also it is not significant, but still it will retain them in the model. Right? He is addressing only the collinear problem, but whereas he is not doing the feature selection, like he is not taking into account of right. So that is the problem with this one, ridge regression. But apart from this, we have something called principal component analysis. Principal component analysis is an unsupervised machine learning algorithm using which you can do dimensional reduction. What is dimensional reduction? Nothing but kind of feature reduction only. Okay, include only the relevant features. But this is very much helpful in terms of addressing the collinearity, multicollinearity. Fine. So in the interview, now you are all set. How will you identify the collinearity? Fine. The next one is, how will you identify the collinearity? In R, you have something called VIF function. It's very much helpful. But in Python, in stats models, there is a function is available. In stats models, dealing with multicollinearity is a problem that you run into when you are fitting a regression model. Simply, method equal to name of method. So that is what he says. So where is this? Residuals and Cook's distance. Diagnosing multicollinearity. So here also variance inflation factor. Instead of VIF, variance underscore inflation underscore factor, you need to use this function to identify the multicollinearity. Okay, you can find out with this. But principal component is very much helpful in terms of identifying and addressing the or identifying is fine. You can use variance inflation factor if any value which is greater than 10. That means those variables are correlated. Those independent variables are correlated. The next step is, how will you solve? Use ridge regression. Supposing, when can I use ridge regression? It's a very simple common sense question.
When there are more variables.
No, 1 second. Scenario 1, right? In scenario 1, let's say I have 10 features, right? And all of them are significant, and a few features are correlated. Then you can go for ridge regression. So scenario 2, when I am not supposed to use, when it is not helpful, the same thing, 10 features are there. All of them are significant except 2, and 4 features. Features can be n features are correlated, right? So all of them are significant except 2. That means only 2 variables, 2 features are not at all significant and not correlated. Okay, and not correlated, right? Not correlated, but 4 other features are correlated. That means 8 features are statistically significant. The remaining 2 features are not significant except 2, right? And also not correlated. These 2 variables are not significant, but these 2 variables are not at all correlated. So we don't have to worry about collinearity, right? There is no collinearity here. But 4 features, say out of 8, 4 are correlated. Forget about this one, right? So if you subtract 2 from 10, 8 features, right? of the 8 features, 4 features are correlated, remaining 4 features are significant. Or let's say all the 8 features are significant. Of the 8 features, 4 features are correlated. Now you tell me, using ridge regression will make any sense? Does?
Yes, actually in second scenario.
No, I say no. Okay, you justify why it is yes.
Because if there is some correlation, right? If, that small correlation also being a factor get affected in the scenario too.
Small correlation.
Means collinearity.
No, I told you very clearly. These two are not at all correlated, but these two are not significant.
No, if you see, but 4 other features are correlated, which are all also a significant one. So that factor impacts, right?
See, the 4 other features are correlated. What you are saying is, out of the 4 features, no, I made it very clear. These 4 features are correlated, okay, and it is nowhere correlated with this one. That's why I mentioned not correlated. See, in this case, what will happen, right? These 2 variables are not at all significant, but still the ridge regression will include them in the model. It will address only the 4 features that are correlated, and also it will include the other significant features, insignificant features, and then the addressed correlated features. So it is not doing the feature selection. It does only the collinearity, right? It addresses only the collinearity problem, whereas it is not doing the feature selection, because it includes all. See, in this case only 2 features were insignificant. Let's say I have 25 features are insignificant. Features were insignificant. In that case, what will happen? Blindly it will include 25 features. Okay, it is addressing other features that were correlated, and it addressed that one. But whereas it blindly includes the remaining 25 features that were not significant. And scenario 2 is, in this case, you don't use ridge regression. The first scenario is the candidate for this, right? So all the features were significant, all the 10 features were significant, and few features were correlated. In that case, the correlated features will be addressed by the ridge regression by assigning 0 to the respective correlated feature slope value, right? So that is how it is finalizing that ridge regression. In this case, you can use ridge regression. Next one is, you have something called lasso regression. Lasso regression. In the case of lasso regression, what it does is, it does this one. But lasso regression doesn't address the collinearity. It doesn't address the collinearity. Okay, it doesn't address, only the ridge addresses the collinearity. Address the collinearity, whereas this one is not addressing the collinearity. Let us take, for example, I have all of them are, let's say 10 features, all of them are significant except 2, and let's say except 2, right? That means 2 features out of 10, only 8 features are significant, remaining 2 are not significant. And these remaining 8 features, though they are significant, it has some kind of correlation amongst them. Okay, I don't want to confuse you everything in one thing, right? Let's go step by step. Of the 10 features, 8 features are statistically significant. Appadina, on the features, we can include it in the model. Remaining features, you cannot include it. Okay, don't include it. See, lasso regression does a good job for this kind of scenarios. Does a very good job for this kind of scenarios. What it does is it removes the remaining 2 features. Blindly it will not remove. I will tell you how it removes. Okay, it will keep only the 8 features in the model. The remaining 2 features, right? It will simply assign a value for the slope for these 2 features somewhat closer to 0. Very less value for this thing. Somewhat closer to 0, right? Some minimal value it will assign to the slope for these two significant. So end of the day, it does the feature selection, but it is not addressing scenario 2. It is not addressing the collinearity. The same thing, I'll copy paste it now. It is doing the feature selection. It includes the 8 features only. Remaining 2 features, it simply knocks out. You just think that way, okay? But if I have something like this, 4 features are, it is not doing the, it is not addressing the collinearity like ridge regression. But it does the feature selection. It is not doing the collinearity thing, right? It is not addressing that one. But here it is opposite. It addresses the collinearity, but it is not doing the feature selection. So that's the reason why what they did, they developed something called elastic net. It is an hybrid of both ridge as well as lasso regression. Address the collinearity and do the feature selection. That is what elastic. Address both collinearity and feature selection. Address collinearity and do features and it does feature selection also. Elastic, they also call elastic net. Elastic net, this is an algorithm. Very simple, right? Very easy to remember. So they call it as a L1 regularization or L2 regularization. I will just, what is L1 regularization? L1 regularization versus L2 regularization. So L1 is called your lasso regression, L2 is called your ridge regression. See, lot of materials are also available, okay, and also you can watch my blog, okay, and I put some blogs, good blogs content here. You can watch that one, okay, regarding this one, okay. So what is lasso regression? Lasso regression is also called as L1 regularization. So they use this term, okay, regularization. And the ridge regression is also called as L2 regularization. See why I introduced these terms, right? Later point in time, in the other models, we will be specifying the regularization type also. So there you will have to say either L1 or L2, so that that algorithm can understand, oh, I had to do lasso regression or ridge regression, okay? L1 and L2 regularization, okay. All you need to just remember these two now. Elastic net, will discuss it later, okay. And also I have included that in my thing here in this script, right? If you I don't know if ridge and lasso, look here, ridge, elastic net also I used it. So all the linear regression, lasso, ridge and elastic. Now I fitted my model with all these four algorithms, and then I compare the training test score for linear regression, compare the training test score for lasso regression, comparing the training test score for ridge regression, right? Lasso, ridge, and the elastic net also you can do it this way. See, all here, how will I specify the lasso? Look here, let's start with the lasso. LASO, straightforward, okay. Lasso alpha equal to 0.0. This is kind of a learning rate. Maximum number of iteration you can specify like this, okay. But once you fit the model, same as linear regression, the lasso 0 dot fit method you are supposed to use independent variables and dependent variable for your training data set, and then directly you compute the score for this one, okay. What is the R squared or adjusted or something like that, okay. R squared itself will give you an idea, okay, whether these two values are closer or something like that. And then I used lasso alpha equal to 0.1. Yeah, if you use alpha equal to 0.01, right? So, but only one function is available for all these three, right? Lasso, ridge, alpha equal to 0.001. Okay, no. This is a different score I used it. The learning value. Okay. Anyhow, you just understand at this moment what is ridge regression, lasso regression, elastic net. ridge regression is helpful in terms of addressing the multicollinearity, whereas it is not helpful in doing the feature selection. That is the drawback of ridge regression. It blindly include the insignificant features while it is addressing the collinearity. It is blindly including the insignificant features also. Whereas lasso regression, while it does the feature selection, it is not addressing the collinear variables. It blindly includes the collinear variables. To address this, there is something called elastic net. It is an hybrid of both ridge as well as lasso regression. Okay, that's all. This is the theory part, and this one I will explain it later. Okay, in the last session we discussed about the k-fold cross validation, right? So what does that? Why do we need to do k-fold cross validation? Why do I have to do the k-fold? So k-fold, the k is the hyperparameter. So what is the difference between parameter and hyperparameter? Can someone tell me? What is parameter? What are coefficients in linear regression? What are coefficients? Beta naught?
Intercept.
And?
Beta 1.
Yeah, excellent, right? Beta naught and beta 1 are also called as beta coefficients. Instead of saying beta coefficients or coefficients, right? Some people say coefficients. Can you tell me the coefficient values? Or some guys, they say, right, parameters. The beta naught, intercept and slope are also called as parameters. Right? So parameters. So here k-fold, in this k-fold, I said the k is a hyperparameter. So here we have to specify the value for the k. But do we have to specify any value for these two in the case of linear regression model? Did we specify any value for this? See, in the predict function, did you specify any value? Simply you apply the trained model on the unseen data, that's all. Did we specify any value? Blindly 1.2, 1.3, did we say anything for this? The linear regression model. No, why to think too much? Look here. See here, I just use LM function, right? And then I fitted the model. All I did was just summary of housing.fit. It gave me the value for the this one, right? The slope values for size, UDS, everything, and intercept also it gave. I did not give any value, right? This is estimated by the model. The slope values and intercept were estimated by model. Okay, there are formulas we can compute it, but we don't have to do it. You know, what is the parameters? So what is the difference between parameter and hyperparameter? That is the question now. In the case of hyperparameter, we have to specify the value explicitly to the hyperparameter. In this case, the hyperparameter is nothing but the k. The parameters are nothing but, in this case, intercept and slope. The parameters are automatically computed by my model. The parameters are computed automatically by the model, whereas hyperparameter we have to specify. So in the case of k-fold cross validation, we specified cross validation. Do cross validation 10 times. That means create 10 folds and run this model in 10 iterations. Each fold will have different training and test set. Look here, I stored the value of this one to scores. Since I mentioned 10, right, it computed the 10 values, the standard deviation scores, right, the scores for 10 folds. First fold this one, second, third, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I simply took the standard deviation of these scores and standard deviation of the mean of all these values. I got this one. Right? So this is how we did it. So the whole idea of k-fold cross validation is to do the model selection, right? Which model is the best model? And some people, they call the feature selection also model selection. For example, in the case of Python, we have something called RFE. We don't have the built-in function like step function is available in Python. So rather there is something called RFE. RFE is something similar to our backward elimination. It includes all the features in the model upfront, and it removes the features from the right to left. It discards the features one after another from the right side to left side. For example, if you have 10 features, right? 10 features, it blindly include all the 10 features, and then it will check what is the score. And then next step is it will remove one variable. It will remove the variable from the right side. So right side is blindly it will not remove. While removing it, it will check from the right side which variable it will check. What is the p-value? Okay, this p-value is less than alpha, fine, we'll retain it. What is the next variable? This variable p-value is much lesser, greater than the alpha value, hence you remove this one, right? It is like your backward, it's kind of, roughly speaking, it is a backward stepwise regression. Okay, there is RFE. The RFE is available as part of feature selection submodule, which is part of the sklearn main model. You need to import the RFE. And f_regression also you can use it here instead of using this, right? So RFE, the first one is you need to specify your model. This is my linear regression model, you remember. So here I mentioned about my linear regression train braid, right? Okay, see model, this is my linear regression model. I pass this as an argument to my RFE function. RFE is helpful to do the feature selection, as I told. Number of features to select 2 here, but you can specify whatever the features that you wanted. Okay, verbose equal to 3, and again fit. So that is the common thing. Whether you use a linear regression model, laser, you need to use fit method. Fit of x comma y. What is x? X is nothing but all the independent variables of a training data set. Y is the dependent variable of the training data set. Now you are done with this. The model got trained. The RFE got trained. So now if you use feature.n_features, this is the variable name that is available as part of features. It tells you number of features, how many number of 4 features are there in total, and then features.support selected features, true, false, true, false, false. That means of the 4 variables like size, UDS and park and MISC, true, one is the true, the rest of them, that means these 2 variables are significant, include these 2 variables. This is how it helps us to identify the features. True is the support value, and ranking is nothing but of these 3 values you rank them, right? So this is the number one is the best one. Okay, this is how you can see. It's all command here. See here, it will be kind of vague. So to find out one thing, right, you need to remember all these things. It's painful thing, but rather you just type this variable dot and press tab. It will give you the help, right? So it will give you the help, a drop down kind of list. There you can select one. It's a painful thing. So looking at one after that thing. So here I mentioned very clearly, okay, so how to define null hypothesis. Beta 1 is equivalent to beta 2 is equal, etc. equal to 0, right? Is at least one coefficient non-zero, right? So if the hypothesis is not true and if you reject it, that means none of the features that you include in your model is helpful, right? Your coefficient, so none of the features were significant. Compute f star will be close to 1 when null hypothesis is true, and much larger than 1 when null hypothesis is false. You just go through on it. I mentioned everything very clearly, okay. But dealing with multicollinearity, This also I discussed it. So we have some variance inflation factor that is available as part of OLS. See, if you want to get the detailed summary like OR, you have to use OLS function. That's the painful thing. But in real-time scenario, they use sklearn only, even in the case of production system. What you do is, you store the training and test data set in a file, flat file, and use the same file while you fit the model, okay, in the OLS, okay. And then just to get the complete detail of that one, right, what is that just R squared. Otherwise you'll have to manually query everything. And then see, the linear regression uses order least squares method also least squares, date time and all the residuals, all the things he is, AAC also it gives. Lesser the AAC, better the model. You need to remember this one also. When I explain you about logistic regression, I will talk about AAC, BAC. AAC stands for archaic information criteria and BAC stands for Bayesian information criteria. But don't worry, you are not going to learn so many terms, but if you learn oddly 20, if you remember 20 to 25 jargons in statistics and machine learning, that is more than sufficient. Fine. So here we discussed about the ridge regression, lasso regression at the high level, but I don't want to talk now. And we have some gradient boosting regressor. This also I am going to talk later. We have something called gradient descent algorithm when I talk. So now you understood in Python how did you do feature selection. We have something called RFE. Okay, you don't rely only on RFE or stepwise regression. We have some other techniques are also available. That I will discuss it later. Okay. And next, what are the things are there? Diagnosing multiclinic. Yeah, we have something else called Cook's distance, and using which we can find out the. See now what happened. You have developed your model. You implemented your model, or you trained your model, and you evaluated the model performance using adjusted R squared, RMSE, and also you validated all the test assumptions are true or not. So all of them were true. Am I good to go with deploy this model in production? See, I did cross validation also. Even after doing the cross validation, I could see that my model accuracy is consistent with the different training data set. My model accuracy is not having too much of variance. Hence, I conclude my model generalized well. So, can I go ahead and deploy the model? Still, you need to check one more thing. Do you have any influential observation in your data set? Okay, that's where you have something called Cook's distance. Cook distance is very much helpful to identify the influential observation. Okay, identify the influential observation. Now let us move to the we have something called outliers, right? So observations that diverge in a big way from the overall pattern. It could have an extreme X value compared to other data points. It can have an extreme Y value compared to other data points. So we need to check which all observations are influential. What is influential? It is a product of both the leverage and outlierness. If I have outlier in my model, see, you need to remember, probably you can note it down. Linear regression is also sensitive to outlier. Linear regression is sensitive to outlier. Why it is sensitive to outlier? Why it is sensitive to outlier? I'll just go back to this one so that you will be able to tell correctly. Linear regression model is sensitive to outlier. Look at this picture and tell me.
Error, because of this error, because if data is moved towards Y, for example, if I have 15, 20 and all, there will be average line will be moving.
Excellent, right? Excellent. If you have, see, these observations are everything are very closer to this one, but except one value. This blue is somewhere here, right? Somewhere here. What will happen? In order to take into account of this one also, this line will get shifted here, because this line should be unbiased. It should cover as close to as many data points. Hence,
Ask your voice little.
am I audible now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, right. So if you have an outlier here, instead of in this case all these values are very closer. Supposing this value is too far from here. So in order to take into account of this blue color circle here, right, this line will get shifted. Just because one outlier, this one will get shifted. If this one will get shifted here, right, if this line goes little bit up, I'll just use the PowerPoint itself instead of using the stylus pen. This is, let's say you have an outlier something like this. Let's say you have an outlier something like this, okay? Just because of you have an outlier, this line will, instead of this line, right, this line will get some shifted somewhere here. So what will happen is all these values, including this value, are somewhat closer, but these values are falling far from this. Okay, this is far. Okay, I have another scenario. Supposing all these values are very closer. Listen, I have another value. Instead of this here, right, I have a value here. Is this an outlier or not?
Partially, yes.
Distance, you just check the distance between all the blue values, blue color circle. See, this is closer to this and this is closer to this. Almost all of them are closer, but except this, right? It is too far. This is outlier, right?
Yes.
Does this outlier has any influence on this line?
No.
That means not all the outliers are influential. Not all the outlier. You can have an outlier also. That doesn't mean all the outliers are influential. But if I have the outlier somewhere here instead of here, right? If I have somewhere here, what will happen? Since this outlier is somewhat along this value, right? Just closer to this line, or let's say a little bit here, right? There will not be a significant influence. Slightly it will get more. That's all. There will not be significant change. But if I have value here, it will completely drag this line down here, right? It will drag the line here in order to take into consideration. This is also an outlier, but this outlier is influential, whereas this outlier is not an influential, right? So we need to identify the features that are, the observations that are influential. How will I find out? Is there any simple technique that are available? Because I have 100 columns are there and I have millions of records are there. Look here, so that's what I mean. Regression line. If let's say I have this is an influential point, right? In this case, right? This is nothing but the blue colored one. Okay, let's say you have this value here, right? So I highlighted in red because it is an influential point. But if I remove this regression line, if this one is, let's say if I have, let's say if I remove this one, right, it will remain as it is here. And look here, let's say I have value here. Will this have any influence? Is this this is also an outlier, but because of this also it will get dragged upward. And this is not influential. How about this one? Yes, influential or outlier? No, it is not an outlier, it is an influential point. Can we say it is an outlier? See, this is the different scenario, right? Beautiful scenario. This is also somewhat closer and we can't say it is too far, right? It is not an outlier, but this record or this observation causes this line to tilt little up in the upward direction, right?
Yeah.
So what we conclude here is, so you can have an outlier, not necessarily it has to be an influential point, but you know to have an outlier, that doesn't mean all the observations are not an influential point, right? Or you don't have any influential point. Still, you don't have an outlier, but this is an influential point here. And another one is, yes, this is a pretty straightforward one, right? So it is too far from this one. It is an outlier and influential point. It is an outlier, not an influential point. This is not an outlier, but still it is an influential point, right? So is there any way if I can identify? But if I remove the influential point, what will happen? Change the fit, right? If you remove the influential point, it will, the data would significantly change the fit. Any influential point may either be an outlier or have large leverage, or both, but it will tend to have at least one of these properties. Point may either be an outlier or have large leverage, or both. Like I said, right? Outlier, but there was no outlier in that case, right? The third scenario. But it has a leverage. Leverage in the sense it is influential, right? Cook's distance is commonly used influence measure that combines these two properties. With the combination of these two, which all outliers are influential and which observation is influential, right? Which non-outlier value is an observation. So for these two properties, we use something called Cook distance. So Cook distance measures the effect of deleting a given observation. Data points with large or may distort the outcome. Yeah, fine. So this is the formula for the Cook's distance. Okay, and using this formula, also you can find out this one. But manually we don't see the this thing. 1 second. We have a plot here. 1 second. In the R, I showed you, right? But R is very much helpful by plotting all these things. I showed you something like at the end. We use something called plot. I don't know how many of you remember. Supposing plot, if I use plot function, housing dot fit. Instead of using the Durbin-Watson test, Durbin-Watson test, or what else? Bruch-Pagan test, right? We can use plot function. Visual inspection, I told you, right? You can validate the linear regression related assumption visually also. Instead of conducting the test, you can. The one problem with the visualization, right? You might get confused with this in some cases. Look here, residual versus layer. So this the dotted thing, right? Dashed thing, right? So you can see like this. Anything above this one is a influential point, 131, and this 5, right? These two are influential point. So residual versus fitted. So this one is this is your fitted values, your model thing, right? And then this is your residuals. Okay. So here you can see itself, right? There are some kind of 131 is here, 6 is here, and 36 there. But you don't have to worry all the thing. You need to look at this one. This is kind of curvy thing, right? It should be ideally, little bit straight line. Okay. So this is to understand whether you have homoscedasticity or heteroscedasticity, right? Ideally, this line is supposed to be straight so that all the values are constant. See, somewhere it is going down, right? Somewhere it is going down, right? It is not good. Heteroscedasticity is there, right? So normal QQ. So all the residuals should be normally distributed. But somewhere, right? So because of some outlier, it is coming, like this. And so scale. Okay, this is for fitted versus standardized residuals. This also should be a kind of straight line, but there is a curve there. But the Cook distance shows us 131 and 5. These two are 6. Anything above this line, right? Or your this thing, yeah. So 5 and all the things. Okay, 1 second. That is. Yeah, Cook distance will help you to understand the influential point. Okay, So I'll just check if I mentioned it here. There is a function that is available in OR for cook distance. Or let us go to the Python, because I don't remember the library name. So here if you look here, right, influence plot, stats models, regression plot with the built-in plotting against leverage, right? So leverage and cook distance, right? Cook distance, influence. You have something called lm dot get to influence. What is lm? Lm is my model name here, right? So this is my model name, linear regression model name. Okay. So lm dot get influence will give you the you are creating instance for, or you are creating instance for the cook distance, and the influence dot cook distance, this is a method is available as part of influence. It returns two values, c comma p. Okay, when you plot these two values, right, you get something like, but when you look at this, it is quite obvious these two values are quite high, right? But instead of relying on this one, if you plot the influence plot, you have something, influence plot is available. If you look at here 130, as we have seen it here, right? So we have seen it here 130 or 131, or we have seen 131 here, right? So 130, yeah, so 130 and 101, 16. See, look here 130. So yeah, 131 here, but here 130, right? So 130 is influential observation, 101, 116, something like that. Okay, these are the influential observation. So what you do is you go and remove those records. Okay, and if you remove those records and try fitting the model and check your RMSE and adjusted R-squared. By removing the influential observation, you could see a boost in your adjusted R-squared. That means that's good, right? But when you present it to your stakeholders, business stakeholders, you need to specify very clearly. So this is an influential observation. After excluding this one, by including this one, this is the RMSE value, right? So obviously, when you exclude the influential observation of the record, your error will reduce, which means your accuracy will be good. Right, your accuracy will be good. Now you tell me, is it okay by removing the influential observation? Let's say you have 10 or 15 influential observations are there. You need to remove that one. But when you remove this, obviously your error reduces and it goes, because the rest of the values are somewhat closer to the straight line. Right? So can we remove this or can we not remove this? Removing this obviously is beneficial, right, in terms of accuracy. But what they say is, no, those are also real data only. It's not a data issue. It's a correct data only. What will you do? See, if you have oddly few observations, you can remove it, right? Observation, the influence observation, you can remove it and then you fit the model, because you have huge amount of data, right? Oddly few, you have some kind of certain things are negligible, right? If you have less number of influence, you can that is a negligible thing. You can remove it and then you can say your accuracy is good. But if the influential observations are significantly more, right, then you have to include that one and you say this is the best we can do. This is from the data scientist point of view. See, if you let's say you did feature selection, right, you included all the features, you used various techniques, or you did some kind of feature extraction, you created a new feature based on the existing feature, which is called a derived feature, you include it in the model. After introducing the derived feature in my model accuracy increased. Fine. What other way you improved your model accuracy? So we have a few influential observations. So what we did, it's a very negligible amount of influential observations. We removed it, and then this is another way of increasing your model accuracy. But in real time scenario, we have more number of influential observation will be there, right? So such it will come, and but again we have various other algorithms are available, right? So we will try other algorithms in order to address these issues. Okay, so this one I will just explain. I think I explained you this one, right? Anyhow, I will just these are the packages and data set you need to import. This is pretty straightforward because you know what is pandas package, and I already trained you on this one. And matplot, seaborn are related to the visualization, we discussed it. And here you can just for my for explanation purpose, training purpose, I include, you can drop the park variable. There is a drop function, you can drop the column, but here I did not specify in place equal to true. If I specify in place equal to true, the park column will be deleted permanently from this. This is not, see, this probably you can ignore this line. Okay, so here what I did, simply I included all the features and I created xy variable. X is holding all the independent variables or the features, y is holding the dependent variable, that's all. And training and test data set I created it. It is slightly different, you have to use train test split only. Okay, this is very much helpful. And on the left side, yes, it is mandatory because this function returns 4 different values. Okay, it returns the independent variables, training and test data set, and then a dependent variable, training and test data set. Okay, and finally you need to fit the linear regression model. Here I created an instance for linear regression. You have something called linear regression, right? A method, this is the one is available as part of sklearn. Okay, if you look at here at the top, I imported linear regression from this package. That's what I created an instance. Once you create an instance, right? This is your instance name now. You need .fit you need to use fit method. Fit within the parentheses, you need to specify all your independent variables and dependent variable of your training data set. Okay, now your model get ready, right? Your model is ready, and apply the model dot predict on the test data set to get the predicted value. Model evaluation, yes, I used something called metrics, right? So here is a metrics dot mean. Metrics is also available as part of sklearn itself. You need to import it explicitly. Metrics dot mean squared error, right? You need to specify this one, the actual and predicted value. Mean squared error for the actual and predicted. If you pass this one, you will get the mean squared error or the sum of squared error, right? Mean absolute error is right, I told you. And score will see, this is the beauty of sklearn. So here my instance name is init.fit. Score, there is a built-in function called score. You need to specify the x test and y test. Okay, and to get the r squared, right? R squared value. This one will give you the r squared value, the score function. Okay. The next one is, once you get the r squared, that's it, right? You store it in a variable r squared. You can, it's kind of a manual way of doing it. But you have something called r2 underscore is also available. R2 underscore score is also a built-in function, using which you can get the r squared value. Okay, but the idea of this one is, score function is, you can get the training and test data set r squared value, right? So here actually the init score is x underscore test, y underscore test, right? This is my test data set. So this is my independent variables. This is my dependent variable of my test data set, right? If you give this one, it gives you the r squared. And similarly, if you want to find out the r squared for the training data set, how will you get? X train. What is y train? See, that's why you have to concentrate very well. Otherwise,
independent training.
Yeah, for this is the training data set. Training data set, x underscore training is nothing but the independent variable of the training data set. Y underscore training nothing but the training data set dependent variable. for the adjusted R squared for the training data set. What is the R squared for the training data set? What is the R squared for the test data set? Look here, score function is readily available. In R, in order to find out the R squared for the test data set, how will you find it? It's a bit roundabout way, right? It's a bit roundabout way of doing this. Right? So, but here there is a score function is readily available. With that, you can find out what is the R squared value for the training data set of my model. What is the R squared value for the test data set? Are these two values are close by? If these two, training and test data set R squared are roughly somewhat closer, right? That means my model generalized well. Or you can use RMSE also, right? RMSE, you can do it. Okay, you applied your model only one test data set, right? In this case, and then you concluded my model training R squared, test data set R squared is somewhat closer. Or you can use RMSE also, right? You have the mean square error. See here, y test and pred, right? Predicted value and y test. Instead of that, y underscore x underscore test or y underscore test, x and y underscore train, x underscore train. So you use the predicted value, pred 1, right? That is the one will be holding the training data set predicted value, and y underscore train will be holding the actual value. The actual value for the training data set, predicted value. With that, you can get the RMSE value for the training data set. This, what you are seeing here is the RMSE or the mean squared error for the training data set. Simple, inga panname adhe dhaan, right? So whatever I did it in the score, right? See here, instead of passing x test, x train, instead of passing y test, y train. The same thing I am going to do it here to get the training data set, the mean squared error, right? Means here you put y underscore train, but the predicted value you need to store it somewhere else. Okay, let's tr I put it, predicted train, right? So what you do is model dot predict on the same x underscore train. If you put it, you will get the pred 1. You pass that pred underscore tr, right? So you will get the the root mean square error for both. And if you take the square root also used it, right? np dot square root. This is nothing but your root mean square error. This is for training data set, test data set. Sorry, this is your training data set, this is for test data set. If these two RMSEs are somewhat closer, or if the adjusted R squared for those two data set, for those two training and test model, right? Then your model generalized well.
Okay.
Your model generalized well. Otherwise, your model is not generalized well. Okay, I just tested my model with the training and test data set. My model is generalizing well. Can I go ahead and deploy that? No. Still, what to do? You need to create tenfold. You need to perform tenfold cross validation. What is cross validation? What is cross validation? You trained your model with the training data set. To validate your model, you apply the model on the test data set, right? That is called your cross validation. Predict function use panrolla. This predict, right? This itself, why I need to apply my model on the test data set? To validate my model performance, right? To validate my model performance and also to estimate the unseen data. Right? But here we already applied my model on the test data set. I computed the RMSE for both the training and test data set. It is overlapping. Look here, training and test score partner somewhat closer, right? Somewhat closer. That means my model is generalized well. And again, I cannot rush and deploy the model blindly on the, but I need to apply my model on various test data set. With the different data set, how that is where the k-fold cross validation is coming into picture. And then you check, right? Or next step is what you do is you remove those two insignificant features, and then you do this one, same step. Okay, compared to that model, this model is really far better. the standard deviation, there is not much deviation, the error is also less. So in machine learning they use the term called bias and variance. You need to be familiar with these terms also. Bias, variance. Roughly speaking, bias is nothing but error. If you look at the various blog and article, right, it will be confusing. There is a trade-off between bias and variance. Right, so there must be a trade-off between bias and variance. What do you mean by trade-off between bias and variance? Bias is nothing but error, variance, right? As I told you, we are using 10 folds, right? 10 folds. For example, I'll just explain one more time so that you don't want to. I'll take some page. Ten folds are there, okay? 10 folds are there, and I will put one more column here so that it will be neat. How do I add a column here? One second, let me do. I think I have to select everything. Sorry, here, right? So insert columns to the right, yeah. Sorry, I included something. 5, 3, 4, 5 is enough. Or let's 6 I'm going to have it here. Right? So 5 folds, 10 folds, right? 10 fold cross validation. And let me do one thing. I use some other color. It is really boring. Difficult to see that. This is pretty clear. Fine. So we have fold 1, fold 2, fold 3, fold 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 10, right? So 10 folds are there. And supposing I have, let's say I have 1000 records are there in my data set. Or let's say 10,000 records. 10,000 divided by 10, how much? 1000, right? Each fold will have 1000 records, and each fold what I do is 1000 records. 1000 divided by 4, how much? 250, right?
250.
Or 1000 divided by 5, 1000 divided by 200, right? So you have 200 records here. So 200 and 200 records. 200 records. Okay. So here 10 fold, but each fold will have only 5 records. Each fold, roughly speaking, it all equally distributed. Each fold's values, roughly, it equally distributes the value, right? Within each fold. Here 200, 200, 200, 200. Okay, let's say 5 thing will be there. Similarly, 200, 200 will be there here, right? So this one, for the sake of explanation, I put it here. For example, the first 200 records, in this case, it will be used as a test data set. It is used as a test data set. 200 records were used as a remaining 800 records were used training data set. My the 10 iterations of my same model will run against different training and test data set. That's what I'm trying to say. So for this training data set, right, and the test data set, the RMSE value is 1.83. This is my RMSE value, right? RMSE value. The same thing I'm going to copy paste, but in this case it is just the normal thing, and here this 200 records are your test data set, right? And let's say for this training and for this data set, the RMSE is 1.0 or 1.6 9, right? So similarly, if you copy paste this, right, the next line, this column will be the test data set, the rest of them are your training data set, this here your test data set, test data set, test data, something like that. Okay, so in that case, what will happen is, for each and every 4 you will get different RMSE, right? You take all the RMSE value, you take the mean value, and you take the standard deviation. For model 1, what is the mean RMSE? What is the standard deviation? Standard deviation is nothing but your variance, right? Standard deviation, we use standard deviation to compute the variance, and error, the mean error we take it, right? The mean of the RMSE, something, mean error. So supposing I have 2 scenarios. Scenario 1, see, the whole objective here is the bias should be less, low bias. The whole objective is, after building the model, before deploying the model in production, we wanted to check the bias and variance. But obviously anyone will think the variance should be less. That means even if I apply the model in any training and test data set, there should not be much variance. Scenario 1, in scenario 1, bias is less but variance is more. Scenario 2, bias is moderate but variance is less. Okay, so in these 2 scenario, which one do you prefer? See, you took one model, right? You include all the features and you computed the RMSE for all these data, different data set for different folds, and you took the average and took the standard deviation for this. Higher the standard deviation, what does it say? What do you mean?
Lesser the accuracy.
Higher the standard deviation means higher the variation. If I use different test data set to make my model to predict, for few data set my model predicts accurately, and few data set my model is not predicting accurately, right? That means my model has not been generalized well. But you look at this second scenario, bias is moderate, though the error is little more, the variance is not much, right? You need to take a call here, right? So it's a bias and there is a trade-off. That's why they say trade-off between bias and variance. Though the error is slightly more, but even if I apply the model on any number of data set, unseen data, it is stable. See, in production, this is what is happening, right? You trained your model, with 2 years data, right? And then you deploy in production. After the deployment, in the production, God only knows, right? Every month new data are comes in. For example, your model has to make a prediction on a monthly basis for the every month data, right? It has to take each month, January, February month. So your model, you took the 2 years data and you trained your model. You apply this model on the every month data, right? Every month data is the test data set, kind of test data set. We cannot say test data set, real time data. You apply the trained model on the January month data to make a prediction. February month data on the, but January month data is completely unseen by my model. February month data also unseen by model. Even though my model did not see any new incoming data, right? The month on month, if you see the error, right, there are not much variance. RMSE last month 22, this month 23, and March month 22.5, and April month 20, not much variation, but the prediction accuracy is not so good. Let's say my adjusted R squared is just 0.9, but it is consistent for each month. The prediction accuracy is consistent. But let's say you fine tuned your model very well, kind of overfitting, right? Your model is performing well on the trained data, and when you deploy in the production, what will happen is January month the RMS is 22, February month the RMS is 50. Though the error is less with your training data, but when you apply the model on the different month new data, the error is not same, it is completely different. It's not consistent, right? That means, hope you understood, right? Guys, please concentrate. I will fine. So the model, so in this case, even though the bias is moderate and if the variance is less, then it is good. So the bias is moderate in the sense, not mild, right? Here it is mild, like in COVID they use this term, right? Mild, moderate. So mild, so moderate, middle, right? So high means critical. So error is less, error is little more compared to this model. Better I can go by this model. I can use this model, and because when I run this model with the different training and tested data set in 10 iterations, still there are not too much of difference from one iteration to another iteration when it comes to the error. Good, then I'm going to go ahead and deploy then your model is fit enough to deploy it in the production environment. Hope you understood. See, I repeated everything one more time because this is the fundamental thing, right? So there are some an advantage, so I just go step by step and I repeated it one more time because this is the important thing you need to remember, right? So those guys, hope you understood, right? These two scenarios, that's all. So based on which you deploy the model. Okay, tomorrow what I will do is I will directly jump into logistic regression. I am not going to explain the implementation of ridge and lasso regression now. Let's not get into that now. First, clearly, okay? At least what is logistic regression, what is the basis for this, what is odds ratio, what is log odds ratio, why do we need to take the log on the odds ratio, and what is the difference between probability and odds ratio, how do I convert the odds ratio to probability, right? That's all. So you can also speak like me after the training program, okay? It's not that it's completely rocket science, it's nothing.